Okay, so now that the deployment is complete, let's go ahead and go to the resource. And what you'll see here is now we have this new virtual machine. So this virtual machine has been placed in the Test Lab Ubuntu resource group. It has a running status. So I'm going to actually go ahead and click on that resource group. And you'll see here that there is more than just one object, that virtual machine, that exists within this resource group. There's a public IP address, a network security group, which serves as a basic firewall, a network interface, your hard drive, a virtual network, and a storage account. So all these objects are needed in order to ensure that this virtual machine is able to run successfully. And so they are grouped together and combined within this resource group. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and manage this this particular Linux machine, I can go ahead and select on the virtual machine. I can see what is the public IP address, and then I can use a tool such as PuTTY in order to connect to this IP address, log in, and be able to manage this virtual machine. Now, other things that you can do is under networking, you can actually see the firewall properties of this virtual machine. And the same is true if you're using any type of SQL database that is perhaps a platform as a service offering, where there's networking components regarding or involved in that resource as well. I can see the disks. I can add additional disks if I want to. And then I can also manage the security. Now, this security has to do with installing agents within the virtual machine in order to be able to surface perhaps recommendations that I can then take action on in order to secure my virtual machine. Now, because I chose a virtual machine, this is an example of infrastructure as a service where I'm responsible for managing the operating system and up in the software stack. Let's say now we are done with our virtual machine. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can identify done. The first is perhaps I'm done with testing today and I simply want to stop my virtual machine so that I'm no longer being charged for the active runtime of my virtual machine. Well, in that case, I can just go in here and click stop. And what it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and power down that virtual machine. That virtual machine continues to exist in Azure. And so you will continue paying for at least the storage that's being actively used and consumed in Azure, but you will no longer be paying for the runtime or the uptime of this virtual machine while it is in a stop state. Now, as part of Azure, as I perform an action, I can go up here to the notification bell, click on it, and be able to see the activities that I've performed during this session, including whether or not stopping virtual machine, this action, has completed. So we just saw that it has completed, and over here you'll see a status for this virtual machine of stopped and deallocated. Now, a different way to see this is if I go to my home takes me back to my landing page, and I can go under virtual machines. Now, additionally, what I can do is I can go up to this blue search bar and type in virtual machines and be able to come up with a list of services quickly and then select virtual machines. Here you'll see a quick view of any virtual machines that are within the scope. If you have multiple subscriptions and multiple virtual machines within those subscriptions, you will see those all in a consolidated list. But then from there, you can choose, based on your filtering, what you want to see, whether it's based off a location or a region, especially if you're using multiple Azure regions, or based off resource groups. You can sort through resource groups. as well as you can click here and be able to filter based on your subscriptions. So now what we want to do is, let's say, okay, we no longer need this virtual machine. We're done with it. One option is you can go in here and simply delete the virtual machine. The only problem with that is if you delete the virtual machine, there are other objects that were created aside from that virtual machine. Objects that we previously mentioned, a public IP address, a network adapter, storage. And so when you go in here and you delete the virtual machine, you are not deleting all those other objects. And so if you just delete it here, you may end up orphaning some of those objects. So instead, the recommended is to go to the resource group level. And here you see all the objects that have been created. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete the resource group. And here now I'll see all the objects that I want to delete. So I'm going to go ahead and type the resource group name. And then once I have that typed, I'm going to go ahead and click delete. At that point, a new task will be running that's going to delete all the resources in the proper order. And then the resource group will be deleted. So let's return to our home page. Now, in our home page, there's other items that we can look at. And again, if you use your search field, there you can search for pretty much anything in Microsoft. You can also click on create a resource. This will take you back to the marketplace. You can click on the hamburger option as well, or the hamburger menu, and be able to actually choose very common resources, including some that have been identified and marked as a favorite. Now, the way you do that is that when you click on more services and you find a particular service that you like, you can go ahead and star that resource, which means it's a favorite. Once it's a favorite, it will show up in your hamburger menu. So let's say we click on mixed reality and we want to choose remote rendering accounts. I can go ahead and click the star icon here. And so now when I click on the hamburger icon, it shows up there. And then if I click, I can actually reorder and sort my navigation pane. So let's go back to home. Now what we want to do is we want to look at our core quotas. So let's go ahead and go under subscriptions, Azure for Students. And under the properties for Azure for Students, there's this usage plus quotas. Now here, oftentimes when you have an initial subscription, you may be limited to how many cores a service can utilize. And so you can go to this usage and quotas pane and be able to see what's being used. So let's go ahead and choose all. And then I'm going to show items with all usage, or show all here. And this will show me everything that I have quotas for, including whether or not something has active usage. And if you want to only see the items that have active usage, you'll notice here, network watchers, storage accounts, these are actively being used. So let's go ahead and show all, and I'm going to switch over to compute. And then here you'll see different services. I'm going to actually filter this down to the D series of family. And I'll actually type in standard D family CPUs. And you can see how many CPUs I'm allowed to use. I'm using 0 of 4 in Australia. And you'll see 0 of 4 in East US. And so if I want to use more than 4 CPUs in East US for the D family, all I have to do is go in here and request an increase. Now, because cost is such a factor when it comes to Microsoft Azure, there are some pieces that you want to be aware of, and it's under this billing section. So here is an example of a pay-as-you-go subscription. This particular subscription is one that has consumption, And as you can see here, you can see under the invoices section under billing, you'll see individual invoices every single month. Additionally, once you are working with a pay-as-you-go subscription, you also have access to cost management. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cost analysis. And under cost analysis, it starts to give you estimates as far as what you're consuming, and additionally, what as well as a potential forecast for how much you will be consuming over a period of time. So the longer you have a subscription, the more accurate this forecast becomes. Now, because costs of services is such an important part when managing a cloud service, there is a way to estimate how much a particular service will cost you over a period of time. And so with that, Microsoft has published a pricing calculator tool. And so underneath, when you go to azure.microsoft.com, you can go underneath the pricing section and click on Azure Price Calculator, and it will take you to this calculator. In here, what you can do is you can actually see the entire marketplace options. So like for instance, our virtual machine, we can choose a virtual machine and it will add it to the bottom. And in here, you can choose, okay, which region you want to run that virtual machine. So in our case, let's go ahead and choose East US 2, or East US rather. We'll choose Linux, Ubuntu. Our standard tier is fine. The type of instance. So this is where you can see all the VM families. I'm going to go back up and choose a B series. So I can see, okay, how much per hour. So I'll choose a B1S. I'm going to choose one virtual machine. Additionally, once you start going with pay-as-you-go options, you have the option, if you know that you're going to have this virtual machine for a long period of time, you have different price tiers. There's a pay-as-you-go, which is simply a hour-to-hour type of consumption, and the price is shown per month. As well as if you know you're going to have it for a year, you can choose a year and you pay for it with a 42% discount. Same thing for a 3-year reserved, 62%. So this is more for long-term, maybe some of your core services that's going to be around for a long time. Take advantage of the discounts where it makes sense. And then as you look through, you can choose different managed disk tiers. Perhaps I want it to be an SSD. You can choose your disk size. Again, we're estimating, so maybe I'll assume that I will need at least 256 gig. And then I'll choose I need one hard drive for that. We'll leave everything else defaults. And so here you'll see $26.99 is my estimated monthly cost. Once you have this, you can export it to Excel, be able to save it, refer to it later on. If you need to see it in a different dollar amount or a different currency, you definitely can.